Hello. Let's see, we're just going to introduce ourselves, and then Guido's going to talk for a while, and then I'm going to talk, and then we're going to let you ask us questions. My name is Kim Bui. I was most recently the editor-at-large for NowThis. I've spent most of my career in somewhere between startups and digital. I started as a reporter doing city government stuff, and I helped launch Reportedly, which was a startup run under First Look Media with Andy Carbon on social media journalism, like telling stories through distributed means, Facebook, Twitter. I've also worked for, let's see, Thunderdome, which was Digital First Media's lab. I worked on an iPad app. I've done pretty much everything you can do under digital, except for work for a magazine. That's the one thing I haven't done yet. But I'll let Guido introduce himself.
Yeah, well, thank you. So no worries. As I'm a lot older than Kim, that would take ages for me to go through that. So I'm working for Deutsche Welle, and I'm the managing director of distribution, technology, and marketing. And when I was asked by Chris to come here and talk about digital transformation and how well Deutsche Welle is doing, I thought, wow, that's great. A wonderful opportunity for us to basically tell you how great Deutsche Welle is and give you a glossy, shiny, super presentation. And then he said, yeah, and do this with Kim because she has a startup background. She really knows how to do it well. So I realized, okay, so my role is a different one. And maybe you can pull up the slides. That's my role here. So I need to be the dinosaur, or at least pretend that Deutsche Welle is a dinosaur, but I'll tell you what, we are there to last. So we'll survive the digital divide, the digital transformation. And I'm going to tell you a short story of survival. Not a success story, though, because it has a lot of flaws, and well, we had some nice experiences, which I would like to share with you. So please, if you want to, for those of you, there's still some seats here in the front, so if you really want to sit in a nice and cozy chair, and you can leave early, we wouldn't mind. So just take the free seats over there. And let me quickly start with the time when I started as a journalist that some love to call the good old days. It all started with this, a very patient audience, sitting there 5 to 8, because at 8 o'clock, that was news time. 8 o'clock, television, living room, news time. And that was the big moment of the media. And now you have to think of a drum roll, okay? So the media is coming in. Very clear role of the media. Yes. We were the gatekeepers. We knew what was important. We knew which story to tell, what strings to pull, because we had it all in us. But that was then. Today, well, we still feel like this. And some of us maybe still enjoy being with the media, especially legacy media. But frankly speaking, at best, we are one of many. And the digital transformation, the sea and overload of information is everywhere. So when it comes to media production, media consumption, media distribution, it doesn't really matter. All of it is digitally transformed, especially for someone like Deutsche Welle. Who of you knows what Deutsche Welle is? Please raise your hand to make this really interactive. Okay, so I'll do this very quickly, because if you have to have content on that many platforms, for linear TV channels in Arabic, in German, in English, in Spanish, and you do this, and then of course online and radio, that is a lot of content to work, and all of it in 30 languages. So every problem that you can think of, you have to multiply by 30, because we always have to find the right solution for all these markets. And we still feel pretty confident, because we have a worldwide network of 4,000 partners. So everybody's helping us to take our content, show it, rebroadcast it, redistribute it. And in today's world, there's more than Deutsche Welle, obviously, but there's a couple of things happening that do help us in a way. The whole festival here is a lot about fake news, alternative facts, how to fight misinformation. So there is a certain urge and need for a broadcaster or a content provider like Deutsche Welle to be out there and play an important role, because freedom of press is under pressure. So that's, in a way, helping us to drive our case home and to be relevant to many people. Then, of course, we have a refugee crisis. Here in Italy, it's a pretty big issue. So that's the same in Germany, many other countries, and of course in the countries where the people are coming from. And terror is out there, so a lot of issues that people are worried about. And then of course there are many, I could add so many more logos to this here. There are so many players out there already who are coming out strong with huge budgets, and they all are trying to get the same audience that we try to get. And then of course there are these players that were not around when I started to become a journalist, but who are now a lot stronger than many of us, many of the so-called traditional media. So that's the setting. Now, let's start on a blank page very quickly. If your name was DW and you had to prepare yourself for a digital world.
That's very clever.
Imagine, and we decided on that name 65 years ago. So this May is our birthday. So you can really know, Germans know a lot about the future. And there were so many people laughing about us when we started out there. When we said in 1994 we went online. We were the first German public broadcaster to go online. People are laughing, online? It's not going to last. We started in 96 to do something like video streaming in 1996. And I do remember there was a lot of criticism, like wasting a lot of money on things that would never, never even fly. Well, maybe yes, they did. But when we talked about digital transformation, and there was a brilliant panel this morning, and they were talking a lot about the fear of legacy media employees out there who are then all of a sudden confronted with that digital transformation, which basically means change. And not so many people love change when they are affected by it. So we're thinking about this. What does it mean for us as a traditional broadcaster? Well, first of all, maybe we need to be very digital and get rid of the analog stuff. So we wanted to get rid of this. For the younger ones in the room, these are fax machines. And believe it or not, the moment we started talking about, because Deutsche Welle set up a goal, and the goal said, we want to be a digital company. So we said, well, we could get rid of some of our fax machines. No, you can't. Let's be digital, but let's keep these guys there because it's really important. So our legal department said they could not continue to exist without a fax machine. And we didn't see that coming. So we thought, okay, let's learn from the young startups. What is it that you definitely need to be digital? Right, colorful furniture. So we went to buy some nice colorful furniture. This is our media lab, or a part of it. And has any one of you ever tried to sit on these colorful cubes for longer than 35 minutes? No matter how old you are, you don't feel very digital after that. Your back is very analog in that moment. But still we thought, come on, we're doing good. I mean, after all, there is a lot, there are so many success stories out there. So why don't we say, we've done our bit, we have digitally transformed, we can lean back and relax and enjoy our birthday. Because as I said, 65 years already out there in operation, and 2017 was the best year ever. So why should we transform? In 2017, we have a reach of 157 million people every week, which is great for us, an international broadcaster, knowing that no one is waiting out there in the world for our content to be used. But these people are using it every month, and there are many more coming up every week, which is great. So we're growing. Wonderful. At the same time, when all of us are worried about, are we credible? Do people believe in media? Media is a lot under pressure. So we were asking about our users, do you believe that Deutsche Welle is a credible source of information? And what surprised us, to be frank, 96% said yes. Yes, we believe your information is trustworthy. And that is, I believe, great. There was another reason to be very complacent here. To say, come on, it's great. These are great figures. This is wonderful. Anybody could just not want more. And remember the other complacent guys that were out there and said, no one's going to happen to me. I'm going to survive. Well, they didn't. And the reason is, if we take that into the media world, the big question is, how do you stay relevant? That is the crucial question. How do you make people use your content tomorrow, again and again? Because if I'm not adding value to your lives, why should I be a media enterprise out there? No matter whether I'm legacy media or a young startup, doesn't really matter. So the big question is, how do we make a difference to the users? How do we stay relevant? And then we have to understand we are not the ones to answer this question. It's not us, the media, to decide what is relevant or what isn't. It is, and here's this picture. So imagine one of these, the flower or the bees, one of it is media, the other one are the users. So who's who? Am I hearing you? So who is the media in this picture? Sorry? The flower, the bee. Okay, well that's kind of 50-50 thing. Both. Yeah, I like both.
Aren't bees dying?
Aren't bees dying? You know what? I actually did not think this through. But to make it more simple, I guess many media people think that they have some very sweet nectar, which is the content, and the bees will be the people that use that nectar and come to us because of it, but the boundaries have blurred. It's, you know, because all of a sudden the bees are producing their own content, so the producer is the consumer at the same time. So the big question is, how do you stay relevant, or how do you get to the right answers, which brings us to the first learning. By taking data-informed decisions. Now all of a sudden we come up with very clumsy German terms that we translate into English, and that's what comes out. Basically what we mean by it is we have so much data out there, and we have still not fully learned how to use it. So for example, we believe editors need to know their audience. Unfortunately, at a traditional media house, they believe they do know their audience very well. Because they've been out there for such a long time, they know exactly what they want. So the big question is, are they asking the right questions? Well, we help them by setting up a so-called digi-desk, a digital desk. And these are data analysts that we embed, and they work together with the editors, basically trying to help them learn from the data step by step. We have an audience development team, has the similar role. Try to learn from the data that you have, take the right decisions. If you take the wrong decision, doesn't matter, just learn from the mistake and try to fail forward. And that is easily said and hardly done. It's a hard job to do it, because it really requires a lot of changing your mindset. So in a way, you are taking away the pride of many of the old hack editors, because they know what is relevant. No one needs to tell them. And you know, usually it's in moments like this, you ask yourself, okay, fine, we decide to do this, let's implement it. So this is ongoing. And I'm not saying we've done it, we've started it. We fail sometime we do good, but we learn from every step. So every success story that is based on a data-informed decision is a good one for us, because it helps people to understand and to learn from that. That's an easy one, because again, I think all our editors believe they do exactly that, tailoring the content to the user's needs, otherwise there wouldn't be a reason to be out there. So let's get rid of all these routines that you did have. You're not asking the editors only, you're relying on the data, take the correct question. But as an editor-in-chief, who of you works in an editorial field? That many, okay. Do you remember the question of the editor-in-chief or someone in charge who usually says, we missed this and this story, I've seen it everywhere, but we didn't run it. Why did we miss the story? Have you heard that story before, that question? We all did. The big question is, why do our editors ask these questions? Why don't they say, well, I'm glad we missed the same stories, because I've seen it everywhere. Let's go for the different stories. And especially if you are legacy media or public media, well, that's why we're there for. Look for the stories that usually are not to be found. And I give you one of these examples, and I was always wondering, when is the time that I will start talking about my daughter when I give a presentation? Because usually that's the older guys who say, and then my daughter came up with this thing, and I realized, wow, that's a smartphone, and I had never seen it before. Well, my daughter, she lives in Uganda right now, and she gave me a call when we spoke, and all of a sudden she says, by the way, I was reading your Deutsche Welle app, I was reading this one article. So she's one of the 157 million, I should add. And she said, I don't like the article. I don't think it was well researched. So who gives this woman the right to write this? Who empowered her? And I said, well, she's our expert on this topic. And then my daughter, 18 years old, said, oh, there's a mistake in whatever, the first paragraph. I didn't like that line, and I thought it was a little bit arrogant. I said, well, I don't know the story. Let me read this later. She had a point. When I was reading this later, she had a point. And so in a way, we thought we were doing the right job and cater to the needs of the users, but obviously we didn't. And I think it was your example this morning that, when you asked your audience in Sweden, and then some of your hosts came back and said was just baffled by realizing they didn't know him because he thought everybody knows him. He's so important. Well, so tailoring the content to the needs of the users is one of the takeaways, which is, of course, as well a technical challenge to give you some idea, because every decision that we take, if we say we want to reach everybody out there in 30 languages, when we talk about video, right now we have 257 different video formats, because our partners in Argentina need different formats than our partners in Zimbabwe. And they all want a different format, different codec, and that is a lot of work and a lot of cost. And so in a way, we are blocking our own resources by doing this. Third and last learning. Working in diverse and cross-functional teams. Okay, now that's an easy one, because look who's standing here. Usually, it's these male, white, end 40, mid 50 guys who are everywhere in media. And so it's very compelling if I talk about having diverse teams. And in Germany, diversity might be a bigger issue. For Deutsche Welle, it is definitely part of our DNA, because we have people from 60 different nations working together. So multicultural background should be easily achieved. But when it comes to gender and age, we could do better, because you believe if you want to have a change and you want to be diverse out there because you are catering to a different audience, if you're not diverse yourself, how should that work? At the same time, ask yourself when you put a team together, who's it that you're going for? Who do you choose? Usually you choose the people that think like you, the people you like. That's your comfort zone. So take the tough decision and leave your comfort zone. Take those people that get on your nerves, that ask these nagging questions all the time. The question that you don't like to hear because you don't know the answer. That is part of diversity. Add them to your team, and that's something you need to do really intentionally, because it would not come naturally, I believe. So in a way, all of these 3 examples have a lot to do not with a digital transformation, but with having or managing change, because change is there to stay, and we just need to adapt constantly to a constantly changing media landscape. And these are at least the 3 things that we have tried. We tried some others, but if you all bring it all together, we said, fine, let's boil it down, because usually the number 1 reply is, I can't do it, I don't have the resources. Sorry, Guido. I would love to do it, I would love to tackle this and do this, but we can't, we have limited resources. I don't believe that. The moment we start to stop doing things, that's the moment when we free resources and can try others. And that is the moment when where we have to go, because managing this whole change is the key. And right now we are not good enough at this. We're not flexible enough. We think we understand part of the problem. We found part of the solution, but we're not there yet. So the whole challenge for us is to find the right mindset, which is flexible thinking, which is what you might call digital mindset, whatever that is. And that is a question that I'm sure Kim will answer in 1 sentence, right?
No. But can I ask a question?
Sure.
While we're doing this? On diversity?
By the way, that was the moment for your thundering applause, because Kim is going to start now, okay? Oh, that is a thundering applause? Okay.
Maybe like a light splash of an applause. On diversity, have you ever done a study on the makeup of your newsroom?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, as I say, at Deutsche Welle we have 30 different language departments. So obviously the Urdu department, you know, has a lot of Urdu speakers, and so, but the whole idea is that when we had a new director general coming in, he realized there were many male people in his top management team, and he wanted to change that. So he said we need to be younger and we need to be more female. So he changed that, and that is very easily done because our top management layer is 5 people, and it was 5 guys before, and now it's half-half, meaning 2 women, 3 boys.
Close
I'm saying
half.
boys. Yeah.
Close to half.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because, like, if you take the Urdu department, maybe do you know that they're all native speakers?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, again, the whole idea of Deutsche Welle is to have native speakers working there because they need to cater to native speaking audience, obviously. Yeah. And we have a lot of people in the country. So in Pakistan, for example. And then they would work together with the Urdu team.
Yeah, that's the important thing, to have people who are not just Spanish speakers who are white, but Spanish speakers who grew up
Yeah, or
Spanish.
German speakers like me who try to pretend to speak English. Yeah. Exactly. I know exactly what you're trying to say. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
That was it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I thought you wanted to take over. Yeah. So see, Q&A. You
Yeah.
didn't believe me.
No. Oh gosh.
And that's my daughter. Well, fine.
That's
Thanks.
his
Yeah. Yep.
So I had maybe three things to do. One is, 'cause I didn't make slides, but one is that I think many legacy places do have this thing called shiny thing syndrome, where it seems like everything that is new and shiny, you run after it. So let's start, like, pivot to video. I don't think anyone should pivot to video because you do what you do well. What do you do when somebody comes up, some boss somewhere says, I read about a thing in Wired, and I think we should do it.
Buzzer. Most of our bosses don't read Wired, so that's an easy one.
Okay, I read about a thing in Digiday.
Oh, maybe usually it's this kind of my son told me type thing. No, let's put it like this. I mean, being a media house like we are, video comes in very naturally. So it is not so much about let's do video. So we don't come from a print background and all of a sudden have to implement video. It's rather a different way of thinking, trying to explain to people who learn how to produce for television that the video we're talking about now is a different way of doing video. So, and then saying, well, basically, using a smartphone is perfect for production. You don't need to have a camera crew and a sound man and a huge team to go out. And so that is the changing process we went through. So, for example, smart production, as we call it, was definitely not a shiny thing to do, but it broadened the scope of our content production big time, because we just had 200 phones and all of a sudden we had 200 video production units. And that wouldn't have happened before. But yes, we would run into issues like, because we have a media lab and then people can, and that's something that I would say with a lot of pride, where all our employees, all our staff can just pitch their ideas. And they can just say, well, here's the idea, why don't we try this? And all of them can vote and decide this is what we try to do. So that is pretty, well, agile for a legacy media. And then the moment comes in where we say, fine, now they've done it, they have a result. And now the key question is, what do we do with this? So, and that's the moment when I believe our old thinking pattern kicks in. We say, okay, now we need to maybe have a department, and then the department has to take over.
Yes.
So, and that's the moment when let's say we're not cool anymore. But yeah, I'd say we have these first mover disadvantages where we try to do things that are not out there. And for example, Wilfried Runde over here, he runs a research, basically a research team, research and cooperation team, where we do different research projects which allow us to do things that are shiny and new and are not out there. So we're rather being in the vanguard of things, but they might or might not see the everyday light.
But the problem, see, I get to be the person that pushes. The problem with labs and all of these places that do the experiments, so you can have 1 or 10 or however many people doing the really interesting experimental cutting edge work, but then you still have the majority of your staff is still doesn't know how to use Snapchat or doesn't tweet on a regular basis. I think that is where most legacy places get into an issue. They put all of the onus to do digital and do digital well on 5 people, and it's not. It's either 5 people or it's a pivot to video or whatever, pivot to whatever, and there's a middle ground there.
So I haven't explained that well. Basically, the idea is there's a very tiny team of maximum 5 people that are coordinating that lab, but it is the employees that pitch their ideas. They would be freed from their daily work, and then they go in and work with this. So beside the training that we do, you know, for example, if we decide to do something, we try to do it well. We design a team, they get a training. But when it comes to these certain projects, it is the people that pitch the stories that can do it. So I believe that is the reason why I'm quite proud about this, because I believe it creates much more than just a nice gimmick here and there. It creates a certain atmosphere that many things are possible, and you can achieve many things without huge budgets. You just have to give the freedom of space to do it, because many mindsets are already out there, and they are very brilliant. Legacy media doesn't necessarily mean that we're dumb and slow and maybe too boring and don't understand things, although that can be the case.
Sometimes.
Yes.
I think it is a matter of scale. You can do it on a small experiment. That's great. You should do small experiments to test something. But then when you get to the moment where you know, maybe a year ago when we all said, "Oh, social video is very important now. It's where we're getting more eyeballs." It's how do you scale that from the small people to the larger of the newsroom. I think that's the difficult part.
Yeah, what we do in these, we call it a cross-functional team, is and that is an ongoing process at Deutsche Welle for every 30 languages. We have our data analysts sitting together with the marketing and sales people, together with the editors, together with developers, and then they have to ask the big question: who is the user that we want to reach? What is the kind of content that we need to be successful, and what is the kind of distribution that we use? And that would automatically lead to things like Snapchat here, Twitter there, because the markets are so different. And then we need to have that change as a result of these teams, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. What's the other thing I wanted to? The other thing I wanted to bring up was convening discussions and conversations. The pitfall I see legacy falling into is they try to create their own conversation about something when there's probably already a discussion happening. So if I'll pick something in the US, gun control. People are already talking about gun control somewhere, but many newsrooms decide that they want to create their own place to talk about gun control because they think they can do a better job. To me, this is a factor of ego. Sometimes we're used to talking in media, talking from like a pedestal on down, and the public doesn't enjoy that anymore. They would rather, it's much easier for us to join a conversation than to create one. But legacy does always feel the need to own it, and that's not necessary.
That might be a point for other legacy media, not for DW, because the role we have as an international broadcaster in all markets, wherever we enter, we are always not the shining superstar, because we are always we are the guys coming from abroad who have to have a very clear value to the users. That's why we really need to make all these very commercial ideas and decisions to say, if we don't have an answer, what adds value to the people's lives, why don't we just let go? So we would never go in and say, well, we have started this super new platform, which is just out there in the middle of nowhere. No, it's rather, I think, but the point you're having is, it's rather the big platforms, the big players, like, you know, where the other session about Facebook, where no Facebook was attending, or the Googles or the others, where you see they are out there, they have the audience, a certain audience, and the question is, how do we cooperate with them? Are they our friends or are they our enemies? And in a way, they are both. They are frenemies. And in some markets that works brilliant, and in others it doesn't. And again, it's always about trying things out, learning, and not falling into the trap of saying, well, we have taken that decision, and now we will stick with it for a very long time, but rather allow for the flexibility to say, we admit defeat. That was a wrong decision. Let's, recalibrate.
Yeah, that's the important thing, to admit defeat. No, not admit defeat, to say we didn't do this correctly, we're going to try differently.
Well, we call it fail forward, but can you imagine, who of you knows Germans pretty well? None? Okay, John, okay. Do you believe Germans love to do mistakes? Okay, now imagine you're trying to implement a fail forward idea into a company like Deutsche Welle. The first question was, maybe we are asking people to make mistakes. Do we invite them to make mistakes? No. We say we don't want to chop off their heads when they do one, so we just don't tell them don't repeat the mistake. So that is still an ongoing discussion at Deutsche Welle, how much of a flexible mindset we have when it comes to making mistakes and how we as the management deal with this.
It's about, I think it's about finding a way to not say it's a mistake, but how to learn from every mistake.
Yep.
So use the thing that you did wrong and create something out of it. Not just, sometimes I see people make a mistake, they'll do something, some new initiative, and then they're just like, ooh, I messed that up. I'll just never do anything like that ever again, which is a waste of your understanding and your knowledge and what you've gathered from doing that project or trying that platform.
Yeah.
Are there questions? Oh, there's. Oh.
You need one of our microphones? Are these the only two in the room? They are, okay.
Yeah, we can share.
We share.
Guido knows who I am, but some of you may not. My name is John Crowley, and I'm a digital journalist, but have worked at a legacy news organisation for many years before. I was just thinking while you were speaking, over the last 5 years or so, it's almost become untrendy to be part of a legacy news organisation with all these kind of glitzy new entrants, and it's actually been interesting over the last year or so that the so-called glitzy new entrants, I won't mention their names, but I think we know who they are, have suffered problems of their own. Is there a kind of a place now, kind of post-Trump, post-Brexit, all these Facebook changes as well, where they're going to be giving kind of more points to credible organisations, that it is actually an opportunity for legacy news organisations to flourish? And have we been too hard on ourselves before?
Well, I would argue, in a way, that's why I was putting up one of these slides saying that the whole debate about fake news, alternative facts, misinformation did bring up a lot of discussion about the role that media can play. And in that respect, if you are a driven person that has a message to say, to tell, and you want to be a journalist, and you want to work independently, well then public media, especially Deutsche Welle, is a brilliant place to be. Because you can't win an election with Deutsche Welle. Where we go, we try to play our part in making sure that any society is better informed than without us. And so we're trying to add to that kind of, let's say, improvement into a society. And I believe that is a wonderful task, and I wouldn't want to work any place else, because it gives you not only a nice feeling of do something good and then go home. It is basically a great job. That's why I, many years ago, decided to become a journalist. And I never had the feeling that I have to excuse myself for doing this. Although I felt that, my friends or many people in society would say, oh media, so, but, and on the same time, I would not put media or public media on a throne, because a lot of energy is wasted, and they are not asking, or we are not asking ourselves enough, what is the value that we bring to a society. But again, with regards to Deutsche Welle and its different tasks to go from Germany to the world and into all these different countries and help them to be better informed, that is a very clear task and a very clear role, and a very good one. That was the moment for another round of applause maybe. But, I really need to be fishing here, it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work at all. I would say maybe, so I started my career at newspapers and then I went to startups. And the reason I have worked at many startups of recent is because as a young female person of color, I was never given latitude. I was constantly asked if I was the intern. I was never given any sort of power in the newsroom. So I think one of the problems with legacy media being uncool was the bosses, the people who were running the newsrooms for a very long time. Maybe recently this has changed, but for a very long time would not let people rise. Especially, I used to joke that I'll never be an editor until somebody dies at their desk in a newspaper. Well, I was actually told that by one of the reporters. She's like, you can't have my job.
Alternative facts.
It was at my very first job at the Kansas City Star. She said, I know you want to do this, but I'm going to do this until I die. Okay, I will go somewhere else. And that was why I eventually left public media, because I was never given any power. I think to Guido's fact, I think the age of Trump, whatever, Brexit, whatever you want to call this that we're in, has made things better. So I'm looking for a job right now, and for the first time in maybe 7 years, I am considering working for a traditional media outlet, because they now are looking again, Legacy is now looking again, and they realize their mistake of not letting young, interesting people rise, or like experiment. They're taking bigger risks because they have to now, because we were so close to abject failure that everyone had to take a big risk. So the New York Times, the Washington Post, all of those places are doing big things now because there's nothing else to do. So now it's interesting again, a little bit. I'm not sure if that's kind of a good out of the bad. Silver linings, silver linings.
Hi, my name is Omer. I'm from Pakistan, a multimedia journalist. My question is, you in your presentation talked about producing content by keeping in view the user's need. So two of our major news organizations in Pakistan are already experiencing convergence. So what we have seen is, if you take into account what people want, they really don't like to read stories related to health or climate change, let's say, for example. So don't you think just by relying on the numbers, the data, analytics, or chart beat, we can end up compromising on good journalism?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, Omar, and I fully agree. I briefly mentioned in the beginning that we have 4,000 partners worldwide. These partners are sitting in exactly the countries. For example, we have partners in Pakistan. They help us to understand what our data means. So where data is just one feedback, then we have our own journalists in the countries, and they try to be as good as they can, as close to societies, as close to having their fingers on the pulse of the people. And at the same time, we really try to understand what the users are telling us. So we are inviting them, and again, having 30 languages, that is quite a challenge, to invite people to give their opinion. Do you like this? Don't you like this? And we try not to fall into the trap of many public broadcasters to stand on top of a mountain and yell at people because you know what is relevant. And yeah, but we do these mistakes. We still have some editors that believe they know exactly what kind of story is out there, but then you have to really go back and say, well, 17 people have used that story during the last hour, and now you're telling me it's relevant. Yeah, well, my users were on vacation. Yeah, well, what else can you say? But I mean, again, one of the big questions is to really understand this data and be in a constant dialogue and to learn, again, what you see, try to take a decision, and then go back, reevaluate what you learn from this. And that is a constant process. So it's not this one-off thing to say, wow, we've done it once, good, now we know exactly what we did. And just to give you a short cliffhanger, the next session here in this room, so there is a big moment to stay, is about how we, for example, cooperate with Facebook Live and what we've learned from this. And Ellen will do this, and Ellen will now raise her hand quickly because she loves this. Yeah, you can tell. So it's going to be a nice session. So it gives you, you know, some great example on what we learned, for example, by using this.
So one of the very biggest stories I worked on when I was younger was about water, and no one cares about water rates. No one cares about taxes until they get their tax bill or their water bill. You ask, like, how do you get people to care about health or climate change? I would challenge you to think it's not the story. It's not the story. I think climate change, people do care about climate change. It's how you're telling the story. It's, I will use an easy example. Okay, John Oliver can make anything interesting to me. I will listen to that man go on a 20-minute rant on, you know, statehood of Puerto Rico or whatever thing I did not care about before. And I think we're trying to feed people their peas and carrots, their vegetables in vegetable form. And we should try like adding it to a casserole or something like that. I think it's how. So if you talk about live video, right, so that you can talk about something that's like health-wise and make it more relevant to the person, or make the story more interesting, or tell it in a different way. And I think that's the failure that people tend to make. Like, oh, people are interested in this story because I wrote a 7,000-word essay on it. Well, of course not. No one wants to read 7,000 words. But if you did a 5-minute video, maybe they would watch it. Or maybe if you made a comic book, they would do it. There's a place, an investigative news outlet that did something on earthquakes in California, which is, again, not a super interesting topic, but they made a coloring book out of it. And that's how they told the story, and it was a coloring book of how to teach earthquake safety to kids. And non-interesting story, but very interesting tactic. I think that's what legacy places have to try. Not give up, don't give up on the story. Just try a different tactic.
And just one quick idea. There's a program called Echo at Africa, and there we co-produce it with a partner in Kenya and a partner in Nigeria, Channels TV and KTN, and Deutsche Welle. So these three companies produce a show together. And it's very funny to see, because some of us tend, even at Deutsche Welle, tend to think that, well, Africa, we know it's not a country, but they must have very similar interests. And then you have this editorial meeting where people from West Africa and people from East Africa sit together and they look at each other like, that story is not relevant in my country. And we're sitting there like, hey, how about this story and that? So basically, and then we put a story together that is, in the end, will get a very broad audience. And it is about environmental issues, and it brings stories from Germany or from Europe, ties them in with stories from different parts in different African countries. And all of it is, I think it's a brilliant program. And if I had told you before we would have done this alone, probably would have failed. Because we would have thought to know, well, we know what they might be needing or what, and right now we can really tailor this to exactly their needs, and it's a brilliant show. So Echo at Africa is one, I hope, one example that shows which way we can go, and that's a very conventional thing to do. TV program. Echo at Africa. Echo, ECO for ecology, and then at, yep, at, yeah. Yeah, too many fingers.
You gotta simplify that title.
Yeah, I know.
Are more questions? More questions?
One microphone flying your way. Thank you.
So, doing less. I mean, did you throw out the fax machines finally, or what did you get rid of?
Yeah, I remember that you had that question in your panel, and I was hoping that no one was asking that question. Because yes, some of these fax machines have survived, and they will in some departments. I guess one of the big questions is, what is it that we have actually stopped doing to free resources? And just the process to decide what really can go is, I guess, one of the most tiring stories of the last year. But to give you a very tiny example, we have a wonderful app. The app has 30 different languages, and part of this app was, because the editor said that's exactly what we need, to have an upload tool to allow users, wherever they are, they could upload their videos, for example, through this app. We definitely need this. So the question we had said was, okay, great, let's do this. that is some technical thing, we can do this easily. But it wasn't that easy. Then this was implemented and we realized no one was using it. So how come? Well, there was no editorial concept behind it. So we said, fine, develop a concept. And then it took us 2 years to switch this off. To say, well, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for us. It might work for others, or it might work if we had an editorial idea behind it, but we should better save the money that we pay for this kind of product. And it's a tiny thing. And you would think it takes you two weeks to decide to switch it off. But then, you know, the whole process, because it is not yet part of our DNA. But the moment that you switch it off, people realize, okay, something is happening. Okay, so doing less better. Oh, and hey, come on, I can keep the money. So it helps me to, if we switch this off, if we don't do this, I can keep the money and do different things with it that make more sense. And that's when sort of the, let's say, the learning curve goes up. And that's the good moment.
How long did it take to build the video upload thing in the app?
Well, there was a quick one because we basically bought the tool and implemented it. Smart.
That's the best way to do it.
Yep.
You would want what they call in startups minimum viable product, the cheapest, quickest thing, because then you can turn it off easily. I guess not so easily in your case. You should turn it off easily. But that's iterative processes. Like I did product management for a little bit, and I think that's some things. Newsrooms don't like evaluating what we do. We build a thing, and we're like, it'll work out. It'll be fine. We just give it more time. More time, it'll be fine. We're just ahead, but we're very bad at sitting down, taking a minute from the news, and looking at everything we do on a regular basis, and then saying which isn't working and turn it off.
Well, more time would be fine, but we don't have more time. So I'm getting all these signs by saying 5 minutes before you have to stop. And we realize we started 10 minutes late, but we start on time, very German, 5 minutes to 6. Thank you so much for taking your time and coming. And as I said, we'll be here to stay. Thanks, Kim. And you know what? She has a dinosaur earring. Look at that. So how cool is that?
No, that was fun. That was fun.